would see some either very heroic or unfortunate scenes, depending on what may happen. Omar Suleiman, thank you for joining us. You've in the last 24 months, as the genocide has unfolded in Gaza, you've become a very prominent voice, especially as a Muslim scholar, speaking up against the genocide, speaking about complicity from Western media, from Western powers, from many parts of the Muslim world. What's your thoughts as you see these 300 activists trying to break the siege on Gaza, and you see the world reaction to it?
I mean, first and foremost, like, we have to express just an immense amount of pride and gratitude in them and for them. Look, where governments have failed, people are trying to pick up the slack. None of this should be necessary, but all of it is warranted because of the failure of governments. And at the end of the day, it's the failure of governments that led to these activists boarding these flotillas and making their way to Gaza. And it's the failure of governments now to protect these activists as they arrive at the shores. And so Gaza as a whole has been a display of the collapse of international law. And, you know, in the absence of any semblance of international law, people are looking for creative ways to contribute to the end of the genocide. And so every single one of these actions opens the door to another action. I think that's what Israel fears most, is that it never stops with this action. It always becomes something else. It inspires more people and inspires more creativity. And so I'm sure this won't be the last time. So as Israel escalates its genocide, we have to escalate our actions in response. And what I will say is that, you know, for Israel right now, this is about optics, right? I mean, they have been thinking about how to do this in a way that preserves their optics in the best way possible, which shows you that they don't actually fear any consequences. I mean, they're not worried about anyone actually meaningfully holding them accountable. They just want to, you know, sort of lean into the narrative war and gain some sort of legitimacy. And so I think we're going to see some cheap PR tactics. I think we'll see, you know, the usual cycle of Israeli propaganda. But let's be clear, they're trying to silence solidarity. And that is on college campuses. That is through buying social media platforms now and openly boasting about it. That is through enlisting a deputy chief of staff of the president of the United States as a foreign agent. I mean, it's insanity, right? So the more they try to silence solidarity, I think they're going to contribute to folks that will not appreciate their heavy hand, and they'll actually embolden more efforts against them.
You mentioned, you know, you started off by saying congratulations to the 300 activists. They filled in where governments have failed. Obviously, it's been very difficult, I think, for anyone who's been witnessing, and many people have been witnessing, the unfolding genocide in Gaza. It's also made us, while it's made us very sad, it's probably made us very angry. Who are you most angry with, or, you know, like, what are you most angry with when you think about what you've seen in the last 24 months?
To be honest, there's a lot of anger to be distributed. I live in the United States. I'm an American citizen. I pay taxes. And so obviously there's a lot of anger towards, you know, the United States government, both under the Biden administration as well as the Trump administration, for enabling, abetting, protecting this genocide at all levels. None of this happens without the United States. And, you know, Joe Biden could have stopped this and Trump could stop this. So it starts there. But I'd say that, you know, as a Muslim, the anger towards Arab and Muslim governments, I mean, to be this impotent, despite the size, despite the leverage that you have with your resources, some of these conversations that are being had now, like the fact that any country still normalizes with Israel, the fact that there are still these backdoor security agreements and, you know, economic benefits and passages that exist, is just so shameful. And at the end of the day, here's how I'd put it. It's not like any of these, well, I don't want to say it's not like any of them care about Israel, because who knows what's really going on there, right? But I think that at the end of the day, these people are auditioning for the favor of Donald Trump. And, you know, everyone wants to be his poodle in the Middle East and to do the dirty work in exchange for all sorts of benefits. And so they care, at the end of the day, they care more about the approval and the well wishes and the benefits of being in partnership with the United States than they do about the people that are suffering in Gaza right now. And that's a shame on the entirety of I think the display of Arab and Muslim governments that have not been able to do anything. And I say that with great sadness. I mean, some of them are definitely more complicit than others, but I think they're all disappointing. Like at the bare minimum, you can say that everyone's been disappointing.
I'm sure you're aware that in the last sort of 72 hours or so, Trump and Netanyahu have put forward a plan where they're going to have some sort of peace board headed by Donald Trump himself. There's talk that Donald Trump has said that Tony Blair will be part of that board as well. What's your reading? I just before you joined, we were joined by Huwaida Arif and Mary Macy, who are part of the contingent of the flotilla. They gave their thoughts on it. What's your thoughts on the plan?
So, look, it's actually not that much different from the other plans that have been taken, manipulated, and then put forward as the very same plans that were agreed to by Hamas. So it's very clear that there was a plan that Hamas had agreed to multiple times that was put forth as an American agreement. Hamas agrees. Netanyahu makes major changes to it, and then it comes back with full American backing that the obstruction is coming from the side of Hamas. In this case, it's not Hamas that's the party, I think, that got played. I think it's all of those governments that were sitting in the room, and that agreed to, I guess, this 21-point plan. And then, it was presented as the same plan to the public, but clearly Netanyahu made major changes, and it was presented as all the same thing. The idea is to continue to portray. So it's twofold, right? It's to give Netanyahu as much time as possible and as much run room to be able to do whatever he wants with no consequences, and to be able to say that we've given peace a chance, and this is sort of their way of vying for legitimacy and playing victim, continuing to play victim while carrying out a genocide. So on the one hand, it's deflection by Israel. On the other hand, it's to portray the Palestinians as, once again, unwilling to make any reasonable peace. And this sort of colors the entire spectrum of Palestinian factions and resistance and, any Palestinian political movement for the last 7+ decades. We tried. Right, that's the idea, is that they're saying we tried, and the Palestinians are never reasonable with these things. So it's a twofold game. Like I said, the only thing that's changed now is that I think the people that got played were the various governments that were in the room. At this point now, I mean, obviously, my personal feelings bringing Tony Blair, an architect of a genocide or an architect of an atrocious war in Iraq that led to the loss of 1 million lives. Bringing him on board, and then giving Donald Trump some sort of a position over Gaza adds 2 layers of colonialism, right, to what's already a colonial situation. We can speak to the ridiculousness of it. I don't know what's going. I'm obviously not privy to the negotiations or to the provisions that will be made, or if there's even room for negotiation of those terms. Obviously, Palestinians in diaspora don't have a say in actually making a decision as to how this goes forward, but we can still point to the ridiculousness of the terms, right? And I think we should continue to do that, while understanding that, just like when we would say after the Nakba that the 2-state solution, those that accepted it from a place of concession and from a place of reckoning with great difficulties and overwhelming circumstances. But it was, even then, a concession and giving up a significant part of Palestinian land. And so any one of these commitments or any one of these deals that are accepted continue to be to the detriment of the Palestinian people, so long as they don't have self-determination. So the key words that we have to just keep on insisting on are self-determination. When you continue to take actions that do not involve the agency of the Palestinian people and only further entrench colonialism and bury the Palestinian cause, you're robbing them of self-determination. So those are just 2 words that we just have to keep on pushing forward.
Omar Suleiman, I know you have limited time, so I'll just have one more final question for you. You mentioned Palestinians in the diaspora. Many people know you, but they don't necessarily know you as a Palestinian. They know you as, an imam and a vocal, voice dealing with people and their spirituality, etc. But I mean, just as a Palestinian, going back to Oslo and going back to the Intifada, and walk us through the last 30 minutes. You don't have a lot of time, so I appreciate it will be a abbreviated answer. But just, probably your whole life. I mean, you were probably born in the 80s when Lebanon was just blown up by Israelis. Well, not the whole of Lebanon, but Beirut, 15,000 to 20,000 people were killed. And then there was the Intifada, and there's a whole lot of things. So just how has that impacted, who you are, what you are, and sort of your ideas, and how has it informed, your spiritual teachings?
So first and foremost, I mean, I'll speak to it from a very human perspective, that my father is still alive, thank God. And he's, he was born before the state of Israel. He lived through the Nakba. He remembers living in a free Palestine in the early 40s. He has seen the Nakba, the Naksa, and everything else in between. And, he and my mother were both Palestinian refugees. My mother was born in Damascus in 1951. She passed away. She used to write about her life. And so, at the end of the day, I lived this through my parents, right? I've never been to Palestine. I've been denied entry. Largely just go to Jordan, have a lot of relatives that have been exiled to Jordan or relocated in Jordan, and all around the world, right? Some of them here in the United States and other places of the world. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of scattered pictures. It's pictures of what our land used to look like. It's pictures of checkpoints that have encroached upon land that we still technically own. It's stories of rape when the Nakba happened. It's stories of murder. It's stories of relatives that got displaced to Gaza that are now second, third cousins, right? But I've never met them before, but they share. I mean, they look like me. I could easily be one of them. And, this person, so-and-so just died. So-and-so just saw his wife and kids murdered. So-and-so just, walked out of a building and had to pull their baby, by one leg out of the rubble. And, the only thing that came out was one hand and, a deformed piece of flesh. Like, these are the stories we hear every single day, right? Now, the pain of living it and being there is something entirely different. So what I would say is that at this very moment, it's, seeing obviously what's happening, like all of you constantly, but seeing myself in those people. And there has to be a radical exercise of empathy on the part of every single human being right now, because we can't normalize genocide playing out on our screens the way that it's happening. So there has to be an exercise of radical empathy. It's much easier for me to have that empathy because they look like me. In some cases, they share the exact same name as me. And I know that it's just a turn or two in the trajectory of my parents that makes it different for me being here versus being there, right? And them being here versus them being there. So we all understand that. And so every Palestinian diaspora has survivor's guilt, or I would say most Palestinians have survivor's guilt. But I'll say this, that at this very moment as an imam, right, I'm working with children that are in the hospital that have lost limbs, lost eyes, and that made it in when those visas were still being accepted, and that are getting treatment for the most barbaric injuries I've ever seen. And we're dealing with another form of silencing solidarity, which are personal friends of mine and community leaders that have been abducted by ICE, and just Palestinian activists being picked up off the streets, in Nazi Germany style, and disappearing because they were voices for the Palestinians. And so this is a lived reality. It's more pastoral than political, but it's inherently political. And so what I would say is that, yes, I mean, most people probably know me as an imam and as a religious figure. And what I would say is that this is a human endeavor. It's a religious endeavor. It's one that requires radical empathy, and Islam requires radical empathy. of the greatest level, right? And we're seeing this embodied by those activists that are on those ships today. Some of them going from a place of faith, some of them going from a place of humanity. I know some of them, and they're going based upon what they feel called to do from Quranic teachings, right? And from teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I know other people that are not Muslim and just are going from a place, again, of just human empathy. We need to channel all of that sincere human endeavor to end the greatest human rights atrocity of our times.
Omar Suleiman, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciated. And best of luck with the rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Salam.